My daughter Maya said words I could not forget. I wish you'd vanish. She didn't know I was standing behind her that night. She didn't see me holding a box of her favorite flowers, white lilies, her father's favorite too. She didn't hear the sound of my heart breaking into pieces that I could never glue back together. Those 5 words changed everything. My love, my trust, my silence. They cut through years of motherhood, years of sacrifice, years of holding her when the world let her down. And what hurt the most? She said it like she meant it, like she truly wanted a life where I didn't exist. I remember that evening so clearly, almost painfully. It was late, maybe 10 p.m., and the city outside my window looked like a field of fireflies. The lights of cars, the sound of people laughing far away. Everything felt so alive. But inside me, something was dying. You see, I had always believed that love between a mother and daughter could survive anything. Distance, anger, even years of silence. But that night proved something darker. Sometimes, love isn't destroyed by strangers. It's destroyed by the very people you gave your life to. Earlier that day, I had been in my office. Finalizing the last payments for the gala Maya was organizing a grand charity event she said would celebrate everything I taught her. It was supposed to be her way of saying thank you. She said it was about honoring my years of hard work, my name, my foundation, the one I had built from nothing. It felt like a full circle moment, a mother handing her legacy to her daughter. I even remember smiling when she called me mom, the woman behind the dream. I didn't know then that she had already started dreaming of a life where I didn't exist. That night, I went to her condo to surprise her. She'd been busy, so I thought I'd stop by with flowers and a small envelope, a honeymoon gift. Something I had kept from her father's will. He had written her a note before he died, a message for her wedding day. I thought, she cried. She hugged me. She'll feel her father close again. I didn't expect to find her laughing. Her door was half open, music playing softly. The smell of candles and perfume mixing in the air. Then I heard her voice, bright, sharp, a little drunk on excitement. Honestly, she said, sometimes I wish she'd just vanished. I froze. I couldn't breathe. For a second, I thought I misheard her. Then her friend Zoe laughed and said, Maya, that's terrible. But Maya didn't stop. She giggled and replied, you don't understand. If she wasn't around, everything would be mine. The foundation, the house, the press, the attention. She always has to be in control. She paused, then added with a laugh that I'll never forget. Maybe she just fade away soon. She's getting old anyway. Zoe tried to hush her, but it was too late. Every word hit me like a storm I couldn't hide from. I stood there in the hallway, the lilies in my hands starting to tremble. Their scent, once comforting, now made me sick. My daughter, the same child I raised alone after my husband died, the same girl who once held my hand and said, Mom, I'll make you proud someday, was plotting a life where I didn't exist. I wanted to rush in, to scream, to demand answers. But I didn't. I just stood there, silent. Because sometimes silence tells more truth than words ever can. When I finally turned away, I saw my reflection in the elevator mirror, a woman with perfect makeup, expensive jewelry, a calm face, but inside, she looked like a ghost. I asked myself, where did I go wrong? Was I too strict? Too giving? Too trusting? Had I made her believe that my love was endless, that she could take, and I would still stay? My eyes filled with tears I refused to let fall. Not yet. I pressed my hand against my chest to stop my heart from screaming. I told myself, Evelyn, breathe. Don't collapse here. Not for her. Not tonight. Back home, I sat in my living room, the same room where I had once read bedtime stories to Maya when she was little. Her tiny hand used to grab my fingers. She would fall asleep before I even finished the story. She'd whisper, don't go, Mommy. Now, she wanted me gone. The silence in my house felt heavy. Even the ticking of the clock sounded cruel. Tick-tock, tick like time was mocking me. Like it was saying, you raised her for this. I didn't sleep that night. I walked through every room, my husband's study, the library, the balcony where we used to drink tea. Everything smelled of memory. Everything whispered his name. And then I saw the framed photo of Maya at her graduation. She was smiling, so bright, so full of promise. I had sold a piece of land to pay for her college. I remember how proud I felt that day. I whispered to the photo, where did you go, Maya? What happened to my little girl? It's strange, isn't it? You spend decades building a life, building a child's future, and one sentence, just 5 words, can destroy it all. I wish you'd vanish. I kept hearing it in my head, over and over, like a song I didn't want to remember. But pain has its own kind of clarity. When your heart breaks in silence, you start to see what was hidden. I remembered the times she rolled her eyes when I offered help. The way she spoke to me at dinner last week, half love, half impatience. The constant talk about money, power, image. The way she said my foundation as if I wasn't even part of it. The truth was always there. I just refused to see it. At dawn, I walked to the window. The city was waking up, lights turning off, people starting their day. And I realized something. Maybe that was the last night I would ever cry for Maya. Maybe love also has an expiry date when it's no longer respected. Maybe sometimes walking away isn't cruel, it's survival. So I made a silent promise to myself. I would stop being the woman who always gives. I would stop being the mother who fixes everything. I would become someone Maya didn't expect, someone who could vanish, but on my own terms. Because if my daughter wished me gone, I would show her what my absence really meant. But before I did anything, I sat with my morning coffee and replayed every moment of her life, her first birthday, her school awards, her wedding plans, her big dreams. And I smiled, not out of joy, but out of understanding. Because sometimes the deepest pain is the greatest teacher. And I knew my story wasn't over yet. It was just beginning. She wished I'd vanish. So I made sure she learned what it feels like when a mother truly disappears. Before you judge me, watch till the end. You'll see why I did what I did and why every mother, one day, must decide between love and respect. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you raised, leave a heart in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will make you question everything about family. The morning after that awful night, I sat alone by my window, staring at the city I had called home for nearly 50 years. The skyline glittered like nothing had changed. Cars still moved, people still hurried, life still went on. But inside me, something had died quietly. I felt like the world had lost its color. You know that feeling when everything looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same anymore? That was me. A mother sitting in her silk robe, holding a cold cup of coffee, pretending everything was fine. But I wasn't fine, because every time I closed my eyes, I still heard Maya's voice. I wish she'd vanish. Those words echoed louder than any city sound outside my window. By afternoon, I forced myself to get dressed. Habit, dignity, pride, call it whatever you want. I still believed in routine. I still believed in control. So I put on my pearl earrings, brushed my hair, and walked into my office like a woman who had not been shattered 12 hours earlier. My assistant, Nora, looked at me with her usual polite smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Hart," Maya called. She wanted to confirm the gala details. Ah, the gala. The event that had become her obsession for the last 6 months? I nodded slowly. "Tell her I'll handle it," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Nora hesitated. She could feel the stiffness in my tone. She had worked with me for over 10 years. She knew when something was wrong. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Her concern made my throat tighten. But I just said softly, "Everything's fine, Nora. Let's finish the payments for the ballroom." The gala had started as my idea years ago. When my husband, Richard, was alive, we used to host annual charity dinners to raise money for women starting small businesses. After he passed away, I named my foundation after him, the Heart Trust. When Maya grew up, she said she wanted to modernize it. She said the foundation needed a younger face. At first, I thought she was right. Times were changing. I thought maybe if she took over, it would make her feel closer to her father. But over time, I realized she didn't want to carry his legacy. She wanted to rewrite it. 2 days after that night, she arrived at my office with Noah, her fiancé, tall, confident, the kind of man who smiled without warmth, the kind who measured people not by their hearts, but by their wallets. "Mama," Maya sang as she walked in, "guess what? The gala theme is confirmed." I looked up, forcing a small smile. "Oh, what is it this time?" "New faces, new dreams," she announced, twirling. "It's going to be stunning. The whole thing will rebrand the Heart Trust as something fresh and modern. Everyone important will be there, city officials, investors, influencers." She went on. And for a few minutes, I saw her the way I used to, full of light, excitement, confidence. I wanted to believe this was our moment, the one that would bring us closer again. But then she said something that made my stomach twist. "Oh, and Noah and I decided to shorten the foundation's name. It'll just be the Heart Collective. It sounds trendier." My husband's name, his legacy, turned into a collective. I tried to keep my voice even. "Maya, sweetheart, your father started that foundation after working 30 years in construction. He said the name trust meant people could rely on it. It wasn't meant to sound trendy." She sighed, impatient. "Mom, please? The world's changed. No one cares about old-fashioned names anymore. The new donors want energy, not nostalgia. Noah chimed in smoothly. We're trying to make it appeal to younger people. Mrs. Hart, you know how branding works. Branding. That word, as if kindness and honesty needed marketing. I looked at both of them and smiled weakly. Of course. You're right. I just want the foundation to stay true to its purpose. Maya grinned, pleased that I had agreed. Perfect. Oh, and Mom, you'll love this. We've invited a major influencer couple to host the gala. They're huge online. It'll go viral. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. When Richard and I started the foundation, we served soup in shelters with our own hands. Now my daughter was planning hashtags and red carpets. Still, I didn't stop her. Because a mother's heart is strange. Even when it breaks, it still hopes. Even when she's betrayed, she still wants to believe her child will come back. I signed the checks. I approved the bookings. The ballroom at the Astoria Grand, the 10-piece jazz band, the champagne tower, the designer floral installations. All of it. A dream she built on my wallet, while I tried to rebuild my trust. A week later, Maya called again. Mom, you'll come to the rehearsal dinner, right? Of course. I said, you'd think I'd miss it. She laughed. Well, just make sure you wear something simple. It's going to be a bit of a younger vibe, you know? Something simple. Younger vibe. Those words stung more than they should have. I had once taught her how to hold a fork, how to write her name, how to balance a budget. Now she was teaching me how to fit in at my own foundation's gala. But I said nothing, because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. Later that night, I sat at my vanity, brushing my hair, when I saw her photo again, Maya at age 5, sitting on my lap, her tiny fingers clutching a red balloon. She had the same eyes. She is now full of dreams. And I remembered something my husband once said before he died. Evelyn, you can give her everything. Money, education, a home. But don't forget to give her roots. If she forgets where she came from, she'll lose herself. Maybe she already had. A few days later, I went through the gala folder invoices. Payments, contracts, every bill was in my name. Every deal carried my signature. Yet, every poster, every banner, every online ad said, presented by the Hart Collective, Maya Hart. Not Evelyn, not the Hart Trust, just her dot. It hit me like cold water. She wasn't just planning a gala, she was planning a replacement. That evening, Nora knocked on my door. Mrs. Hart, are you all right? You've been staring at that file for hours. I smiled faintly. I'm fine, Nora. Just going through memories. She hesitated. If you don't mind me saying, ma'am. Your daughter is very ambitious. But sometimes ambition needs boundaries. I looked at her, really looked at her dot, and for the first time, I didn't defend Maya. I just whispered, I know, Nora, and maybe it's time I set them. When the office emptied, I poured myself a small glass of wine and walked out onto the balcony. The night was quiet. The city lights sparkled. Just like the night she said she wished I'd vanish. I took a deep breath. I knew I couldn't tell anyone what I'd overheard, not yet. Because when a storm is coming, you don't shout at the thunder. You wait, you plan. And that's exactly what I decided to do. Wait and plan. She thought she could replace me. She thought she could erase the woman who built everything she stood on. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Sometimes, love makes you blind. Not because you don't see the truth, but because you refuse to. And that was me. After everything Maya said, after everything I overheard, I still wanted to believe she was just tired, stressed, overwhelmed by the event. I wanted to believe she didn't mean it. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We take pain and turn it into excuses for our children. We say, she didn't mean that. We say, she's just going through something. We forgive before they even ask for it. But sometimes, forgiveness can become another form of self-destruction. The next morning, Maya called me, her voice cheerful and sweet, as if nothing had happened. Mom, she said brightly, guess what? We confirmed the champagne vendor and the floral team. It's going to be beautiful. I took a deep breath and smiled into the phone. That's wonderful, darling. You'll love it, Mom, she continued. I know how much Dad's foundation means to you. This gala will show everyone how far we've come from your time to mine. From your time to mine? That sentence hit me differently, like a quiet goodbye disguised as gratitude. A few minutes later, she added casually, oh, and Mom, we just need one last thing. The venue payment. How much? I asked softly, already knowing the answer would sting. She hesitated. $250,000 total, but it'll all come back from the donors afterward. It's basically just a deposit. $250,000. I could have said no. I could have said, Maya, That's too much. But instead, I said, all right, send me the invoice. Because deep down, I didn't want to be the reason her dream failed. That night, I sat by the fireplace with the papers in my hand. The golden light danced across the documents, reflecting my own face in the glass table. A face that looked tired but stubbornly calm. Every line of the contract had my name on it. Evelyn Hart, principal donor. But every press release draft said, presented by Maya Hart. Still, I signed it. As the pen glided over the paper. I whispered to myself, this is for peace. This is for love. This is for her. It felt like a prayer. But prayers don't always reach the heavens. Sometimes they just echo in empty rooms. A few days later, Maya came to visit. She was glowing, dressed in soft beige silk, her makeup perfect, her perfume expensive. She hugged me tightly, the kind of hug people give when they need something, not when they miss you, Mom. She said, thank you so much for believing in me. You'll see, this gala will change everything. I smiled. As long as it makes a difference for others, that's all that matters. She nodded quickly. Of course. Oh, and don't worry about the guest list. I've got it covered. Can I see it? I asked gently. She hesitated. It's still being finalized. You know how these things are. I didn't push, but my heart already knew I wouldn't like what I'd see. After she left, I found myself walking into my late husband's study. His chair was still there, the smell of old paper and cedar still faint in the air. I ran my fingers over the photo of us from years ago. He was smiling, holding baby Maya in his arms. He used to say, Evelyn, one day she'd take over everything we built, and she'll do it with pride. He was right about the first part, not about the second. I looked at the photo and whispered, Richard, I'm trying to keep her close. I don't want to lose her. But silence answered me back heavy and hollow. 2 weeks before the gala, the first big issue came up. The decorator called me directly, Mrs. Hart. I just wanted to confirm, are we still doing the theme Legacy of Trust? Legacy of Trust. I repeated, confused. Yes, that's the one I approved. There was a pause. Oh, strange. Miss Maya told us to change it to a new reign. A new reign. The words felt like thunder. Legacy meant family. Reign meant power. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Thank you for letting me know, I said calmly. Please continue with her instructions. But inside, something snapped. That night, I opened my laptop and searched the Hart Collective Gala online. Hundreds of posts appeared. Flashy photos, sponsorship ads, headlines like, Maya Hart launches her own legacy event. A new era for the Hart Collective begins. Not a single mention of me. Not one dot. It was as if I'd already vanished, just as she wished. The next morning, I confronted her gently over breakfast. Maya, I saw the new posters. They look beautiful. But why does it say the Hart Collective by Maya Hart? She looked up from her phone. Oh, Mom, it's just branding. Everyone knows it's your foundation. But we need to show leadership change. It's a PR thing. Leadership change. Mama, relax. It's not a big deal. You're still the heart of it. I'm just the face now. The heart. The face. The heart pumps the blood, but without the face, no one claps. I wanted to say something sharp, but I swallowed my words. Not because I was weak, but because I was waiting for the right moment. Later that week. She came by again, carrying her tablet full of designs and muck. She sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through flower arrangements, color palettes, and celebrity seating charts. Mom, what do you think? She asked, turning the screen toward me. I looked carefully. Everything was beautiful, perfect, actually, but something was missing. Where are your father's photos? I asked softly. She blinked. Oh, I thought we'd skip that this year. It feels outdated. People want something fresher. I froze. Outdated. She nodded, distracted. You know how it is. New generation, new stories. For a second, I couldn't speak. The man who built the foundation, who died working for it, now considered outdated. I put the tablet down quietly. Maya, I said softly, please remember, this wasn't built for fame. It was built for people who needed hope. She rolled her eyes. Mom, hope doesn't trend. And with that one sentence, I realized I wasn't just losing a daughter. I was losing the last piece of the life we had built together. Still, I didn't stop her because I had made a promise to my husband, to myself, and maybe even to the scared mother inside me, who still wanted to believe her daughter could change. I promised to let her finish what she started, to give her everything she thought she needed, to let her feel powerful. Before she realized what power costs, so I signed the last of the checks. I transferred the final $250,000 payment, and when the receipt arrived in my inbox, I stared at it for a long, quiet moment. Then I whispered, this is it. This is my last gift to her. Because deep down, I knew when people get everything they want, that's when they finally show who they really are. That night, I opened my diary. It was something I hadn't touched in years. The first page still had my husband's handwriting. Trust is built slowly, but once it breaks, it doesn't make a sound. It just disappears. I wrote under it, I think I heard it disappear tonight. She thought I was giving her everything, but what I was really giving her was enough rope to hang her own lies. It was a bright morning when the first crack in Maya's perfect picture began to show. The city was glowing, golden sun spilling across glass towers, the hum of cars below, the world pretending to be peaceful, but peace doesn't come from sunlight. It comes from truth. And the truth was beginning to rot underneath all her glittering plans. I arrived at the Astoria Grand Ballroom that day, wanting to surprise her. The place was huge, crystal chandeliers hanging like frozen rain, long marble floors polished to perfection. Workers rushed around, setting up drapes, floral arches, velvet chairs, and light rigs. I felt proud at first. This was something I had always dreamed of when Richard and I started our little charity events. A grand hall filled with laughter, hope, and purpose. But what I saw next changed that feeling into something else, something colder. On the main stage, there was a giant LED backdrop being installed. It read, in bold gold letters, The Hart Collective, Maya Hart. No mention of me. No, founded by Evelyn Hart. No in memory of Richard Hart. Just her name, shining like the only one that mattered. I stood there, my heart tightening inside my chest. I didn't want to make a scene, so I quietly approached the project manager, a young woman who looked both nervous and busy. Excuse me, I said gently. Who approved this banner design? Oh, Miss Maya did, she replied, flipping through her clipboard. She sent the final layout last night. Said she wanted a modern look. Clean, bold, independent. I repeated that word in my mind like a curse. I walked around the hall, looking at the table settings. All white and gold. Elegant, minimal. The floral team was working fast, arranging lilies, orchids, and roses. Excuse me, I asked one of the florists. Why are there no red tulips? He looked up and said politely, Miss Maya requested we remove them. She said red tulips remind her of older styles. Those were Richard's favorite flowers. We used them in every charity event. He said they represented loyalty, the kind that never fades. And now they were gone. Maya arrived soon after, wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf. When she saw me, her smile froze for half a second. Then she said brightly, Mom, I didn't know you were coming today. I thought I'd take a look. I said softly, It's coming together beautifully. She glanced nervously at the workers. It's still a work in progress. Don't worry, I'll make you proud. I'm already proud, I said. I just noticed a few things, like the banner. And the tulips, she sighed, her cheerful tone faltering. Mom, please, you have to trust my vision. You said you wanted me to lead, so let me lead. I did, I said quietly. But leading doesn't mean erasing. Her eyes flickered just for a moment with something sharp. Then she smiled again. You're overthinking it. It's just an event. But to me, it was a mirror showing who she had become. As the workers continued, I noticed one of them whisper something under his breath. I turned slightly and saw two of the decorators glancing at me, giggling. One said softly, That's the mom, right? The one footing the bill. The other replied, Yeah, but she's just a guest now. Just a guest. The words sliced through me. I had become a guest in my own legacy. Later that afternoon, I went to the back office to sign a few delivery receipts. That's when I saw something that made my pulse quicken. On the wall, there was a framed seating chart. The final version, my name was there, of course, but not at the front, not even near the board members. I was seated at table 16, near the press section, far from the VIPs and keynote speakers. Table 16, at my own foundation's event. And in bold print at the top. The host's table read, Maya Hart and Noah Walker. No Mrs. Evelyn Hart, no founder. Just her and him. I felt a sudden coldness rise through me. Not anger, not sadness, just quiet disbelief. It was one thing to feel betrayed in private. It was another to see your erasure written down, printed, laminated, and hung for everyone to see. I stared at that chart for a long time, then turned away and walked toward the ballroom again. Noah was there now, standing near the stage, talking to the catering team. When he saw me, he smiled politely. Mrs. Hart, he said smoothly. Always a pleasure. Everything's going perfectly. I nodded. It certainly looks that way. He hesitated, then added, Maya really appreciates your support. She's under a lot of pressure. You've built quite the empire. Big shoes to fill. Big shoes, I repeated softly. She's not supposed to fill them. She's supposed to walk beside them. He smiled thinly, that kind of smile people wear when they think they've already won. Of course, he said, you're truly admirable. Admirable. What a polite word for irrelevant. That evening, when I got home, I poured myself a small glass of wine and sat on the balcony. The city lights blinked below, warm, bright, endless. But I didn't feel part of it anymore. I thought about how easily people change. When given a taste of power, it's not always sudden. Sometimes it's slow, quiet, like a seed that grows in the dark. Maya's seed had been planted long ago. The first time I gave her something she didn't earn. And now it had bloomed into pride. Over the next few days. The disrespect grew louder, but always wrapped in politeness. Her assistant would call me Mrs. Hart instead of Ms. Hart. Found her emails about the event stopped being copied to me. Every small decision, every update I had to hear through whispers. When I finally called Maya to ask about the keynote speaker, she laughed. Oh, Mom, you don't need to worry about those details anymore. Just relax and enjoy the evening. Relax. Enjoy. Two words that people use when they want you to stop asking questions. The day before the gala, I received the official invitation card in Boston gold, delivered in a sleek envelope. It said, The Hart Collective Gala, hosted by Maya Hart and Noah Walker. A celebration of vision, power, and change. Vision, power, change. Trust. Not family. Not legacy. And at the bottom, in small letters, almost hidden in the design, was special acknowledgement to Evelyn Hart. Special acknowledgement, that was all I was. Now a footnote in my own life story. I placed the card down on my table. Next to a photo of Richard holding baby Maya, I stared at it for a long time. H was all so beautiful, so carefully designed. The invitations, the banners, the speeches, the image of success, and yet behind every polished surface, I could feel something cracking. Because nothing built on betrayal stays beautiful for long. That night, I looked out my window again, watching the lights dance over the city. I thought about what I'd overheard weeks ago, the laughter, the words. I wish she'd vanished. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I didn't feel small. I just felt ready. But because now I knew I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to explain my worth. I only needed to wait for the right moment. And when that moment came, everything she'd built on my name would come crumbling down. 3 days before the gala, the air in the city felt different, heavy, still, as if something was about to happen. Maybe it was just my nerves, or maybe it was the way silence tends to grow thicker before the truth finally arrives. I woke up early that morning, my phone buzzing with constant notifications. Messages, emails, updates from the gala team, all addressed to Maya Hart. Not one to me. I scrolled through the emails anyway. Every line felt like reading the obituary of my own importance. Then one subject caught my eye. Final guest list approval. I opened it, and what I saw made my hand tremble slightly over the screen. There it was, 220 names. Business leaders, investors, influencers, political figures, and then I looked for the ones that mattered to me. The people who had stood by me when I had nothing, the women who'd helped me build the foundation from a single rented office room. But their names weren't there. I searched again. Margaret, Sophia, Mrs. Bennett, Ruth. None of them. Gone. Instead, there were new names, faces I didn't recognize. Younger, flashier, popular, socialites, bloggers, influencers. The people who loved flashing cameras. Not quiet charity. For a long time, I sat staring at the list, unable to blink. Then I called Maya. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and distracted. Hey, Mom, what's up? I'm just on my way to the stylist. I didn't waste time. Maya, I just checked the final guest list. Where are my friends? Margaret, Sophia, the Bennetts. Oh, she interrupted, her tone casual. About that, I had to make some changes. Changes, I repeated. Mom, please don't be upset, she said quickly. It's nothing personal. It's just, we had to make room for people who could actually help the brand. Networking and all that. I felt my heart sink. The brand? I asked softly. Mom, you don't understand how this works now, she continued. We can't fill tables with old acquaintances. These events are about exposure, about power, about relevance. I went quiet for a few seconds, trying to control my breathing. Relevance, I whispered. So, the women who helped us build the foundation are irrelevant now. Mom, please don't make it sound so dramatic, she said, a hint of irritation slipping through her polished voice. It's not about disrespect, it's strategy. Strategy. That's what betrayal sounds like when it's dressed in confidence. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in silence. My coffee had gone cold. The morning light had turned sharp and cruel. I walked to my bookshelf and took down an old photo album. The early days of the Heart Trust. There we were, Margaret and I, at our first charity dinner, carrying boxes of donated clothes. Ruth helping design the first brochure. Sophia counting receipts with me late into the night. We didn't have influencers then. We had heart. We had sincerity. We had truth. Now, all of that had been replaced with glamour. I decided to call Margaret. She answered immediately, her warm voice soft as ever. Evelyn, darling, how are you? I was just wondering about the gala. I haven't received an invitation yet. I closed my eyes for a moment. Margaret, I said quietly, you won't believe this. You're not on the list. There was a long pause on the line. Not on the list, she repeated. But why? I've been there every year since Richard started it. Did something happen? I could hear the hurt in her voice, and it made my chest ache. I don't know. I lied softly. Maybe it's a mistake. I'll look into it. She didn't argue. She just said, Evelyn, dear, don't worry about it. It's your event, your family. I'll watch from home and cheer for you. When she hung up, I sat there staring at the phone, realizing she still believed it was my event. If only she knew how far from the truth that was. That evening, I received another message, this one from the catering team. Final tasting event attendance. Maya Hart. Noah Walker, PR team. Confirming that Evelyn Hart will not be attending, as per Maya's note. My hands shook slightly. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood the shape of her intentions. She wasn't just planning to shine, she was planning to erase the next day. I decided to visit the foundation office, my own office, though I hadn't been there in weeks. When I entered, even the air felt different. My nameplate was still on the door, but inside, everything had changed. New staff, even the photo wall once filled with pictures of me and Richard, now displayed images of Maya shaking hands with celebrities. One of the interns. A polite young man looked up nervously when he saw me. Mrs. Hart, I didn't know you were coming. I didn't either, I said softly. Where's my daughter? She's in the conference room. He said quickly, meeting with the sponsors. I nodded, walked past him, and stopped at the glass wall. Inside, Maya was laughing, confident, radiant, the perfect host. She was explaining her vision for the future to the donors. Every time she said we built this foundation, the room clapped. But I noticed something strange. She never once said my name. I turned to leave quietly, but one sentence stopped me in my tracks. A man, one of the sponsors, asked, So, will your mother be giving the opening speech this year? Maya smiled politely. Oh no, she's retired now. She prefers to stay out of the spotlight. Retired. Out of the spotlight. That was the story she had told them, that I had stepped aside willingly, that I had given her permission to take over. It was a clever lie, the kind that hides behind polite smiles and smooth tones. I walked out of the building without saying a word. The air outside was cold. Even though the sun was still high, I felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me for a long time. I sat in my car, staring at the wheel. I wasn't crying, not yet. I was past tears now. I was in that strange place where pain turns into clarity. And in that clarity, I began to see things differently. Maybe this was my fault. Maybe I'd made it too easy for her to forget. Maybe, by giving her everything, I'd taught her that nothing had value. Maybe, by shielding her from struggle, I'd turned her into someone who only respected power. Richard used to say, when people never learn to earn something, they think they own everything. He was right. That night, I walked through my home slowly, touching the old piano, the framed photographs, the memories I'd built over decades. Each one whispered something, fragments of laughter, echoes of warmth, pieces of a past I was losing bit by bit. In the corner of the living room, there was an unopened box of decorations from our first charity dinner. Inside, I found a small handwritten card, something Maya had made for me when she was 10. It said, "To Mom, the woman who helps everyone and never asks for anything." My fingers trembled as I read it. I traced the faded ink, the childish handwriting, the love that once lived there, and then I whispered to the empty room, "You were right, little one. I never asked for anything. Maybe that's the problem. I placed the card gently back into the box and closed the lid. The air felt still. Heavy final dot because deep down I knew whatever this gala was meant to celebrate. It was no longer about legacy dot, it was a coronation. And I was no longer the queen. But the thing about queens is they never need to scream when they lose their throne. They just wait. They watch, and when the time comes, they take back their crown without saying a word. The night before the gala, the city seemed unusually quiet. Even the wind sounded like it was holding its breath. I couldn't sleep. My mind was a restless tide, rising and falling with questions I didn't have the courage to answer. I walked through my house barefoot, each step echoing in the stillness. The chandeliers hung above me like frozen stars. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same anymore. Tomorrow, Maya's grand event would light up the city. My name would be on the sponsorship banner. My money would fund every flicker of the lights, every note of music. But I would be nothing more than a shadow in the audience. And for some reason, I still couldn't bring myself to hate her. Not yet. At around 10 that night, I picked up my phone and scrolled through old messages between us. They went back years. Birthday wishes, love you mom, texts, pictures of us together, the kind that made people believe everything was perfect. I stopped at one message from 5 years ago. It said, "One day, I'll make you proud, mom. You'll see." Tears pricked my eyes, not because of what she said, but because she already had. Once, before pride turned into greed, a strange thought came over me. Maybe. I told myself, if I just saw her face tonight, if I talked to her calmly, one last time before the gala, maybe things could still be fixed. Maybe she'd look at me and remember who she used to be. So I took my coat, my keys, and drove to her condo. The city streets glowed under the streetlights, wet from a light drizzle, reflections of red and gold rippling under my tires. When I reached Maya's building, I hesitated at the entrance. Part of me wanted to turn around, but another part, the mother in me, COULDN, single quotes, T. I told the guard I was visiting. He smiled politely and let me in. The elevator hummed softly as it carried me upward, my heart pounding with a rhythm that didn't match the quiet music playing inside. When the doors opened, I heard laughter, faint, careless, the kind that fills rooms when people think they're safe. Her door was slightly open. I could see the warm glow of lights spilling out into the hallway. Music played softly inside, slow jazz, expensive and mellow. And then I heard her voice, Maya, laughing. But not the laugh I remembered. This one was sharper, colder, the kind that carries cruelty beneath charm. "You should have seen her face," Maya was saying, her tone amused. She came to the ballroom and started asking about the banner, the flowers, the tulips, of all things. Another voice joined hers, Zoe, her closest friend. "Did you tell her?" "Of course not," Maya said with a scoff. "Do you think I'd ruin the surprise?" "She still thinks she's being honored tomorrow." Zoe gasped playfully. "Maya, you're terrible." Maya laughed louder. "Oh, come on. You know what she's like? Controlling, dramatic. This gala is my moment, not hers. It's time people saw me for who I am, not as her daughter." I stood there frozen. The hallway felt smaller, darker. My breathing slowed, each inhale heavier than the last. Then Zoe said softly, "But she did pay for everything, didn't she?" Maya's reply came like a dagger.
Yeah.
"About $250,000. But she can afford it. Consider it an early inheritance." Zoe chuckled nervously. "You're playing with fire, girl." "I'm not," Maya said. "She'll be fine. She always lands on her feet. She'll probably even clap for me when I give my speech." Her speech, the one I used to give every year to honor her father's memory. Zoe hesitated again. "Still? Saying she's retired? That's a bit cruel." "No." Maya's voice dropped lower. "She should be retired. I mean, mom's had her time. Everyone's tired of her old stories, her old-fashioned ways. The world doesn't need her anymore." And then, with a cold laugh, she added, "Honestly, sometimes I wish she'd just vanish. Would make things so much easier." My chest went still. There it was again, those same 5 words. The same venom she'd spoken weeks ago, now repeated without guilt. I gripped the edge of the wall to steady myself. My mind was a blur, half rage, half sorrow. Zoe must have noticed the tone because she said, almost whispering, "Maya, that's your mother." "I know," Maya said sharply. "But she's exhausting, Zoe. Every time I try to do something new, she wants to remind me it was her idea first. I can't breathe with her around. She's just old news." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. It pressed against the walls, against my heart, against the very idea of who I thought she was. I had come here hoping to find my daughter. But the girl I'd raised, the one who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared of thunder, she was gone, replaced by a stranger with my blood in her veins and nothing of me in her heart. I stepped back quietly, afraid that one creak of the floor would expose me. My throat felt tight, but no sound came out. I turned slowly, my heels almost silent on the marble floor. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, but to me it sounded like thunder. I walked in and pressed the button for the ground floor. My reflection in the mirrored wall stared back at me, pale, expressionless, distant. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Was this the same woman who once built an empire from nothing? Who fought through grief? Who carried her family alone? No. This was someone else, someone betrayed by the one she loved most. When I reached the car, I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. The city lights blurred through my tears. I didn't sob. I just sat there quietly, letting the pain sink deep into the silence. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it settles quietly, like ash after a fire. And in that quiet, something new begins to form. By the time I drove home, midnight had passed. The streets were empty. My house was dark, except for the dim glow of the lamp in my study. I poured a glass of water, sat down, and let everything play in my mind. Her words, her laughter, the tone of her voice when she said she wished I'd vanish. Then something inside me shifted. The ache that had been living in my chest for weeks began to change shape. From pain into clarity, from sorrow into resolve. She wanted me gone. Fine. But she had no idea what that really meant. I went to my safe, opened the drawer, and pulled out the gala contracts. The thick stack of papers with my signature on every line. I flipped through them slowly, one by one, until I reached the clause I'd memorized weeks ago. In the event of cancellation by the principal donor, all payments are subject to partial forfeiture. My eyes lingered on the words principal donor. That was me. Still me. Always me. For a long while, I sat there in silence. The papers spread before me like a chessboard, and I realized I'd already lost the queen's position in her world. But the game wasn't over yet, because I still had the next move by dawn. I had made my decision. It wasn't rage that guided me. It wasn't revenge. It was something colder, a quiet kind of justice. She wanted to live in a world where I didn't exist. Then she would learn how that world truly feels. The first light of morning crept through the curtains, painting the room in gold and gray. I looked at my reflection one last time, and for the first time in weeks, I saw strength again. Not the soft kind that forgives two eyes, the kind that survives. Then I whispered to the empty room. She wished I'd vanish. So I will. But not before she understands what that really means. Morning came slow and soft, but it did not bring comfort. It brought a strange clarity, the kind that arrives after a long night of thinking, when sleep finally loosens its grip and leaves your mind sharp and awake. I awoke with the taste of steel in my mouth. Not anger. Exactly. Not yet. More like the cool focus of someone who has decided a hard thing and will not be moved. Maya's words circled my mind like knives. I wish she'd vanish. They were not new. I had heard them before. But now they were no longer just words to hurt me. They were a map. A map that showed where my daughter had gone and how far from me she had walked. I walked through the house slowly. The morning light made dust motes glow like tiny planets. Everything was the same. The piano, the old record player. The faded rug Richard loved, but I felt like a foreigner in my own life. I poured coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the gala files again. The contracts lay like evidence. Neat and legal and cold. Each document reminded me that I had given her the tools to build her stage. I had signed, I had trusted, I had hoped. Now those tools were in hands that wished me gone. There is a point in betrayal when you stop asking why and start asking what now. That was where I was. The why had bled out long ago into 1,000 small moments. The missing photos, the erased names, the polite exclusions. What remained was a single, practical question. What could I do? I could scream. I could confront her in front of everyone. I could make the city know what she had said. But that would have been theater, loud, messy, and hungry for attention. I did not want theater. I wanted a quiet correction. I wanted to fix the wrong without dressing it in spectacle. So I read the contracts again. Slowly. Like learning the face of a problem. So I could solve it. There it was, careful legal language about deposits. Cancellations, non-refundable clauses. I could cancel the gala as the principal donor. It would cost a sum, yes, but it would also stop the show she planned to use as her coronation. It would show the world that the money behind the banners belonged to someone who would not be erased for show. I thought of Richard and his hands rough from work. I thought of nights when we balanced bills and wrapped gifts for small businesses. I thought of the lessons we taught Maya about honesty, about dignity. If she wanted a crown built on my name, then she must carry the weight of what that name meant, or not wear it at all. I called Nora into my study. She arrived quickly, tidy, and efficient as ever. "Good morning, Mrs. Hart," she said, already sensing the mood. "Is everything all right?" "Sit down," I said. "I need you to do something for me." She sat. Her eyes watched me, careful and kind. "Of course." I laid the contract on the table and pointed to the clause. "If I cancel as principal donor, there is a partial forfeiture. I will lose some money, but the gala won't happen." Nora frowned. "You'd cancel, but, ma'am, the donors will understand," I said softly. "They will see the truth if we let them. Send a cancellation notice to the venue and the major vendors. No speeches, no gala, no banners. Do it quietly, professionally. We will accept the cost." Nora's face went pale. "Ma'am, are you sure? This is a lot of money to lose." "I know," I said, "and I know how to bear it. Tell the legal team to prepare the notice. I want it signed and sent today." She hesitated only a moment. Then she nodded. Her loyalty had been with me longer than anyone's. She placed a gentle hand over mine. "I will do it." After Nora left, I took a long walk. I needed air, but mostly I needed to feel the world in a way that thinking alone could not give me. I walked past the little bakery where Margaret used to bring bread for the volunteers. The bell chimed when I passed. A young couple sat drinking cappuccinos, unaware of the fights and deals and quiet heartbreak that built foundations. The city moved on, indifferent and relentless. I thought of the women I had served with, the ones who learned to run a stall, the ones who used a small loan to open a shop. None of them had ever spoken to me like I was a shadow. They had respected me. They had thanked me with hugs, with rebuilt homes, with letters that said, "We would not be here without you." That was the truth, not the glossy images Maya wanted. Back at home, I drafted a short letter. Not for Maya, not yet. For myself, and for the world that mattered. I wrote about the foundation's origin, about the promises we made, about the people who had helped us. I wrote that the Heart Trust was not a brand to be rebranded away from its truth. I wrote that names matter when they hold stories and promises, not when they are just a logo for show. It was carefully worded, not an attack, not dramatic, just a statement of fact. I had no desire to humiliate my child publicly, but I would not be erased quietly either. The legal team prepared the cancellation notice with efficient care. I signed. My hand trembled slightly as the pen moved across the page, sealing a fate I had both feared and accepted. The final figure was painful, a sum large enough to sting, small enough to be bearable. I had been through worse. I reminded myself of that dot. Then Nora sent the notices. The venue replied quickly with a polite but firm message acknowledging the cancellation. The vendors responded in legalese. Some were disappointed, some simply professional. The world of contracts is not kind or cruel. It is only neutral and immovable. Paper does what paper does. That word traveled quietly. Donors called. Some were surprised. A few were angry. Most wanted to understand. I spoke to each of them like an honest woman. I told the truth of my decision without drama. I said, "This gala will not proceed." Then I explained that the foundation would continue in a different form. Smaller events. Direct funding for projects, scholarships, the real work, not the show. One longtime donor, a man named Carter, called me and said simply, "Evelyn, we back your choice. This is the work we signed up for, not the glamour." His voice was steady and kind. It felt like an ally stepping forward. Margaret called later. Her voice was trembling, but grateful. "You did the right thing," she said. "You always did." I could hear the relief in her words. She had felt excluded. I had returned the favor to Truth. At noon. I sat down and wrote to Maya. Not to shame her, not to yell. Simply to tell her I knew what she had become and that I could no longer be part of its performance. I explained that I had canceled the gala. I told her I would not allow my name to be used as a backdrop for a show that denied the people who built it. I told her I loved her still in the way a mother keeps. Love even when she has to protect herself. I pressed send and felt an odd lightness. Not joy, not victory, but a release, as if I'd set down baggage I had carried too long. Her reply was instant. It was full of fury and disbelief. She wrote that I'd ruined her career, that I had humiliated her, that I had stolen her moment. She accused me of being selfish, of being petty. Her words were sharp, careless, and intended to wound. I read them in silence. Then I folded the paper and put it in a drawer. Her anger did not reach me the way it used to. It bounced off something harder inside, a stone steadying into place. That night, I walked to Richard's grave. The cemetery was quiet and cool, the grass whispering in the breeze. I placed a single red tulip, the one flower she had removed from the event, on his stone. It felt right to bring back a small thing he had loved. Richard, I whispered, fingers trailing along his name carved in stone. I did what I had to do. His name was a comfort and a compass. In the wind, I imagined him saying one of his old sayings. When someone forgets what they owe, remind them by what you do. I smiled. It felt like the slightest proof that I had chosen the right path. That evening, I sat by the window and watched the city glow. No gala lights. No band tuning up. No crowds. Just the normal life of a place that had almost forgotten how important small, honest things are. I had lost money. That was true. I had also likely lost a daughter in the way I once had her. That was true, too. Grief is a twin to justice. Both live in the same house sometimes, handing each other tea. I thought of the future scholarships, small business grants, women renting a space because of a loan we would give. I thought of the quiet work that changes lives in ways that do not make headlines. That was the real legacy. That was what I would protect in the nights that followed. People came by, volunteers, old friends, women who had built their lives with small loans and big courage. They hugged me, told stories, their gratitude filled the rooms and made the house feel like a home again. Maya called a few times. Her voice was always sharp and then softer, trying to find a tone that would push me back into some role I would not take. I did not answer. She left messages that moved from anger to pleading. I did not reply, not out of spite, but because silence can be a boundary as strong as any wall at the end of the week. The city was quieter than it had been before the gala was planned. People moved on. The world kept turning. In that turning, I found a small, stubborn piece. I had paid a price to save a name that meant more than show. I had chosen to stand for memory, for promise, for the women who had trusted us when we were nothing. The truth had sunk in. It was not a soft truth. It was a hard, heavy stone, but it was right where it needed to be inside me, steady and unmovable, and I was ready to live with the consequences. The rest would follow. Morning light streamed through the curtains, painting pale lines across the floor. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of calm that arrives after a storm has torn through everything and left behind quiet ruins. The house smelled of coffee and old paper. Nora had already come and gone, leaving my breakfast on the kitchen counter, eggs, toast, a note that said, "Everything's been finalized, Mrs. Hart." I stared at the note for a long time. Finalized. A simple word, a small one, but it carried the weight of an ending. The gala was officially canceled. The city would wake up that day to murmurs of confusion. Sponsors would whisper, reporters would write gentle questions. And my daughter would face the silence that came when applause vanished. I took a slow sip of my coffee and watched the steam curl upward, disappearing into the morning light, just like the illusion she had built. By noon, my phone began to buzz. Calls, messages, emails, all from Maya. I didn't answer the first 10. I didn't answer the next 10, but she didn't stop. So finally, I picked up. "Mom," she started, her voice trembling. "Please tell me this is a mistake." "It isn't," I said softly. "What do you mean it isn't?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The vendors, the guests, the press. I know exactly what I've done." I interrupted. "I've canceled an event that no longer stood for what it was built upon. You've destroyed everything," she shouted. "My reputation, my career, my credibility. People think I'm a fraud now." I stayed quiet for a moment before answering. "You only destroy what was never real, Maya." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a long exhale. Sharp, angry. "Do you have any idea how this makes me look?" she hissed. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." I closed my eyes, resting my head against the chair. "Maya," I said slowly, "you embarrassed yourself the moment you forgot who you were doing this for." "Oh, don't start with that moral nonsense," she snapped. "You just couldn't stand it, could you? You couldn't stand that people were finally seeing me." Her words cut, but not deep. The wound had long scarred. I spoke calmly. "I've seen you your entire life, Maya. I was the only one who ever truly did." She didn't reply immediately. I could hear her breathing, shaky, uneven. Then she said, "You think you've won something, don't you?" "No," I whispered. "There's no victory in losing a child." Her voice softened, then barely. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Yes, you did," I said. "You meant every word you said. You just didn't expect me to listen." I heard her inhale sharply, the sound of pride colliding with guilt. After that, I ended the call. I didn't slam the phone down or cry. I simply placed it on the table next to Richard's old watch and sat in silence. The sound of the clock ticking filled the room. Tick, tock, tick. Time moving forward, as if reminding me that even broken things must continue. In the following hours, messages began pouring in. Some were kind, some were curious. A few were cruel people defending Maya, accusing me of being jealous or controlling. I didn't respond to any of them. People always see only the surface, the glitter, the titles, the rumors. They never see the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the tears behind closed doors. I let the noise pass through me like wind through an empty house. Later that evening, Nora came by with a folder of documents. All financials reconciled. She said gently, "The loss is significant, but manageable. The foundation's savings remain strong." I nodded. "Good, we'll redirect the funds." She looked at me curiously. "Redirect?" "Yes." I said, "If this money can't buy respect, it can at least buy change." Her brow furrowed slightly. "What do you have in mind?" I turned toward the window, watching the last light of sunset fade across the skyline. "A new program," I said slowly. "Small grants. Real help. No events, no cameras, no names on banners. Quiet work. Honest work." Nora smiled faintly. "That sounds like you." "It used to be," I said. "It will be again." The next morning, news outlets started calling. They wanted statements, interviews, explanations. I gave none. Instead, I released one simple press note. The Hart Foundation will continue its mission privately. We remain committed to supporting women in business. The gala is canceled by mutual decision. I didn't add blame. I didn't add reasons. Silence can carry dignity when words are poisoned. That evening, I went to the old community hall on the south side of the city, the first place Richard and I ever held a charity dinner. It was smaller now, older, but the walls still carried echoes of laughter and struggle. Inside, a few women were cleaning up after a small event, a training workshop for single mothers starting home businesses. One of them recognized me. "Mrs. Hart," she said, her eyes widening. "You came here?" I smiled gently. "Yes. I used to work here." Her face lit up. "Because of your foundation, I opened my own tailoring shop last year." She reached for my hands, rough, warm, real. "You changed my life." Her words sank into me like sunlight through winter clouds. In that moment, I realized I hadn't lost everything. I had simply remembered what mattered. When I came home that night, the city felt lighter. Maya hadn't called again. The noise had started to fade. I knew she was probably facing the backlash, angry sponsors, curious journalists, confused friends. But I also knew this. Sometimes pain is the only teacher pride listens to. I went to the study and opened a drawer filled with old letters from Richard. One caught my eye, yellowed edges, neat handwriting. I unfolded it carefully. "Evelyn, if the day ever comes when truth hurts more than lies, choose truth anyway. It will clean the wound even if it bleeds." I smiled through tears I hadn't planned to shed. He had always known how to speak to me, even years after he was gone. I placed the letter back, turned off the lights, and stood by the window one last time that night. Outside, the skyline shimmered. The city didn't know my story, didn't know what it had lost or gained, but I did. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt alive, scarred, yes, but whole. Because sometimes vanishing isn't disappearance. It's transformation. It's the quiet art of stepping away from noise and choosing peace instead. That night, I slept soundly. And for the first time, I dreamed of nothing. No words, no anger, no faces. Just stillness. Just calm. The kind that comes when a woman finally chooses herself. A week passed after the cancellation, and the city had mostly moved on. There were whispers here and there, a few quiet articles, a couple of social posts, but life kept its steady rhythm. Shops opened, trains ran, people met and parted. I filled my days with work, small grants, meetings with women who needed help, calls with volunteers. The foundation's true work returned to its roots, humble and honest. And yet, in the quiet spaces between tasks, I found my thoughts drifting back to Maya. Not with rage now, but with a slow, weary sadness that lives in the bones when you realize someone you love is lost to themselves. Then the phone rang. The screen showed her name. For a moment, I didn't move. I set the papers I was reading down and let the phone ring twice more. I had chosen silence before, a boundary that had protected me, but hearing her name made something inside me shift. Not forgiveness, not openness, just a careful readiness to listen and see what she would say this time. When I answered, her voice came thin, different than the confident tone she'd worn like armor for months. Mom, she said. The word was small, unfamiliar. Can we talk? I could hear the city in the background, car horns, distant conversations, but her voice filled the space between us like water. It trembled. Sure, I said, and kept my voice steady. What is it, Maya? There was a long pause. Then she inhaled and said, I didn't expect all this. It got out of hand. People are mad, Mom? Her voice cracked on the last word. Sponsors are pulling out. Noah's lost some deals. My PR team, they're saying it's a disaster. She sounded small, not the woman who had planned and commanded and charmed the room into doing what she wanted. Small, frayed at the edges. Are you okay? I asked softly. No, she swallowed. I'm not okay. I thought you would stand by me. I thought you'd let me have this. Everyone told me I could do it. I thought I was ready. Something in her words regret. Yes, but also confusion. She had believed in an image more than in the work. She had been taught to chase applause and mistaken it for respect. Do you regret asking me to pay? I asked. It was a careful question, not an accusation. I wanted her to say the truth. No, she answered quickly. I thought I needed help to make it credible, but I didn't expect to be erased. I didn't expect you to actually cancel it. Her breath hitched. I thought you would be proud. Pride, such a small word, such a heavy thing. I wanted to be proud of you, I said honestly, not used by you, not made small so your name could grow bigger. There was silence on the line. Then, quietly, Maya said, I never meant to. I didn't know how to be the woman my father wanted me to be. I thought if I had his name and a big event, people would respect me. Her voice was like a child's now, raw and real. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be something other than his little girl. Those words dug into me, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. The hunger for recognition can twist the best of intentions. It had done that to her. Maya, I said softly, you are not defined by a night or a banner. You are more than a speech and a backdrop. I spoke not to fix her in that moment, but to remind her of something she had forgotten. She sighed and then asked, almost in a whisper, will you forgive me? The question was small and honest. No theatrics, no loud demands, just a simple plea. I closed my eyes. Forgiveness is a gift a mother gives often, but it is not always immediate, and it should not erase the lesson learned. I thought of the women who had built their lives from little loans, the volunteers who had poured sweat into projects without asking for a photo. I thought of Richard and the honest life we had led. I forgive you for your words, I said slowly. Words can be said in anger. I forgive you for that. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean letting someone use what was built for their own gain. That's where we differ. She was quiet. It was like she was absorbing the meaning of my words, trying to hold them steady. I know, she whispered. I messed up. Then she said something that surprised me, not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. Mom, I'm scared. People are calling me shallow. They say I care only about image. Noah's friends are asking questions. My own mother canceled me. Her voice was a mixture of panic and shame. I don't know who I am without that applause. When someone you love admits fear, you find your own heart opening in ways you didn't expect. The child in her, the one who used to hide under blankets during thunderstorms, was still there. She had grown into someone hard to recognize, but she was still, in a way, your child. You will figure it out, I said. Losing what you thought would make you whole can be the hardest lesson, but sometimes it's the truest one. You'll find what really matters if you listen. Her next words were a step toward something real. Can we meet? Not to talk about the gala, just to talk. I need to hear from you. Really hear you. I thought about that for a long moment. A meeting could be a trap. She could beg, manipulate, try to draw me back into old patterns. Or it could be a chance, a bridge back to the person she might become. I remembered the little card she made when she was 10. The one where she had written, to Mom, the woman who helps everyone and never asks for anything. The memory made me ache with a tenderness I had kept even through the worst. All right, I said finally. Come by the house tomorrow afternoon. Bring nothing but your true self. She paused, a small laugh of relief on the other end. Thank you, then, she added softly. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. The line went quiet, and when it ended, I sat with the phone in my hands, thinking about the fragile thing called regret. It can be a beginning. It can be a trap. It depends on what someone chooses after they feel it. The next day, the house felt both ordinary and charged with possibility. I set out tea and simple biscuits. I made the room quiet, giving space for words to land without distraction. A mother knows how to prepare a place where truth can be spoken, not with grand gestures, but with steady calm. When Maya arrived, she came in slowly, holding her coat like it was a shield. She looked different, softer, eyes rimmed with tiredness. For the first time in months, she didn't wear the armor of polished speech. She looked at me, and for a moment her face showed genuine remorse. "I brought nothing fancy," she said, and we both smiled. It was a small bridge, but it was one. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the kettle clicking in the background. No cameras, no advisors, just two people and the space between them. She spoke first, haltingly. She told me about pressure, how she felt her father's shadow, how she thought a gala would prove she could carry it. She confessed to being blind to the people who had helped, to thinking that replacing the old with flashy names would bring respect. She admitted how dizzying the rush had been when people told her she was the future. When she finished, I listened, not to judge, not to lecture, just to listen. Then I spoke not with accusations, but with memories. I told her about the early days when the foundation had nothing. I talked about the volunteers who knitted blankets, about the shop owners who paid back loans so they could offer hope to another woman. I reminded her that respect grows from work done in the small hours. She listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes with her fingers twisted around the rim of her cup. Occasionally, she would look up at me with that lost expression of a child learning to stand again. At one point, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was shaky. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry I said those things. I was cruel." Her voice broke on the last word. "I don't know how to fix it." "You start by being honest," I replied. "You start by saying the truth publicly, if you must. You start by returning what you can, by rebuilding trust piece by piece." Her face changed. "I will," she said. "I'll make statements. I'll apologize. I'll reach out to the women I excluded." She sounded determined, but uncertain. Determination without follow-through is only sound. She needed steps, not speeches. "We will work together," I said quietly, "but not under the banner you wanted to hang. We will rebuild it the way it should be, slowly, honestly, and you will learn what it means to be accountable." She nodded. And for the first time in a long while, I saw a real small crack in the armor. It let light in. After she left, I sat alone and watched the afternoon sun move across the floor. The meeting had not fixed everything. It had not erased the weeks of pain or the months of disappointment. But it had opened a door, a fragile, tentative door, and sometimes that is all you can ask for. I did not trust the future yet. I kept that cautious, hard-won wisdom close. But I also did not close the door completely. A mother learns to hold both hope and caution at once. That night, before bed, I placed one last red tulip by Richard's photo. I whispered into the quiet, "We'll see what she becomes." Then I turned off the light, feeling the soft, complicated peace that comes when a hard conversation has finally been spoken. The next few weeks were unlike anything I had imagined. The city that once whispered gossip about the canceled gala slowly grew silent. People found new stories, new distractions. Time, I realized, doesn't stop for anyone, not even for mothers and daughters at war. And somewhere inside that silence, I found something precious. Peace, not the fragile kind that comes from pretending everything's fine, but the deep kind that grows when you finally stop explaining yourself to the world. I woke early every day, made my coffee the same way Richard used to, and opened the balcony doors to watch the sunrise. The air was clean, the sky wide. For the first time in years, I didn't have a list of calls to make or meetings to attend. I didn't have to dress for cameras or smile for donors. For once, I was just Evelyn Hart, not Mrs. Hart, the founder, not Maya's mother. Just me. It's strange. Freedom. When you've lived your whole life giving, it feels almost sinful to rest out at first. I kept thinking I should be doing something, fixing something, saving someone, proving my worth. But as days turned into weeks, I began to understand something profound. Peace doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Stillness that lets your heart mend quietly, without performance. Maya kept her promise. A week after our meeting, she released a statement, short, honest, surprisingly humble. In my ambition to modernize the Heart Foundation, I lost sight of what it truly stood for. I hurt people who didn't deserve it, especially my mother. I am deeply sorry. No flowery words, no excuses, just truth. It didn't undo everything, but it mattered. The world reacted kindly, more kindly than she deserved, perhaps. People like redemption stories. They forgive quickly when apologies sound beautiful on paper. But I didn't need the world's forgiveness. I needed her change. And so I watched from a distance. We spoke occasionally, short calls, polite check-ins, the kind of conversations built carefully, like rebuilding a bridge plank by plank. She asked how I was. I said I was fine. She offered to help with the foundation again. I told her, not yet. She didn't argue. She understood that not yet was better than never. I spent more time at the community centers again. The Southside Hall became my sanctuary. The walls were cracked, the chairs mismatched, but the air there felt alive, full of laughter, work, and honest gratitude. One afternoon, a young woman named Priya came to me. She was nervous, holding a small business plan written in neat cursive. Mrs. Hart, she said shyly, I heard you help women start their own shops. I make candles, handmade. I just need a little start. I smiled and took her papers. Her hands trembled as she passed them over. I read her proposal carefully, line by line, simple, sincere, real. We'll help you, I said, looking up. You remind me of someone I once was. She laughed softly. A dreamer, a believer, I corrected. And that's rarer. That evening, as I walked back home, the city glowed beneath the soft light of dusk. Cars honked, children laughed, street vendors called out prices. Life moved in rhythm. And I realized this was what freedom truly felt like. Not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of purpose. Clean and true. When I reached home, I found an envelope at my door. It was from Maya. Inside was a handwritten note and a small photo. The note read, Mom, I visited Dad's grave today. I brought tulips, red ones. I thought you'd want to know. The photo showed her kneeling by the grave, a single tulip in her hand, her eyes red but calm. I stared at it for a long time, my heart softening in ways I hadn't expected. Not because I thought all was forgiven, but because I saw sincerity in her eyes, the kind that cannot be faked. Later that night, I lit a candle and sat by Richard's old armchair. Did you see her? I whispered into the quiet. She finally brought your flowers. The candle flickered, casting shadows across the walls like gentle applause. And I felt him there, not as memory, but as presence. The next morning, I met Nora at the office. We were planning the new scholarship program. Smaller, direct, no public events. Let's call it the Heart Promise, I said. Nora smiled. Simple and strong, just like you. We both laughed softly. It felt good, that easy laughter that had been gone for too long. By noon, we had the framework ready. 5 scholarships. 1 for each year of the foundation's new beginning. I signed the papers with steady hands, not realizing until that moment how symbolic it was, ending something with a signature once and beginning something new with the same gesture. That weekend, Maya called again. Her voice was softer, humbler. Mom, can I visit the foundation sometime? Not to take over, just to volunteer. I want to help quietly. I paused. There was no hesitation in her tone, no hint of pride, just sincerity. Yes, I said finally. Come on Monday. We start at 9. Wear something you can get dirty in. She laughed, and the sound was different this time, lighter, almost like the laugh she used to have as a child. I will, she said. Monday morning came bright and clear. Maya arrived early, dressed simply, her hair tied back. No jewelry, no cameras. The volunteers greeted her warmly, though a little cautiously. She smiled at everyone, listened more than she spoke, and worked quietly beside the women sorting boxes of supplies. I watched from across the room, silent, not as a mother, not as a critic, just as a witness. And what I saw gave me hope, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that humbles. At one point, Priya, the young candlemaker, dropped a box of jars, and Maya bent down instantly to help her. It's okay, Maya said, smiling. I've broken more than this in my life. Everyone laughed softly. The sound filled the room like sunlight. For the first time in years, I didn't see her trying to prove something. She was just being, and maybe that was all I ever wanted for her. That evening, after everyone left, we locked up the hall together. Outside, the air smelled of rain. We stood for a moment in the golden haze of the streetlight. Maya turned to me, her expression open, vulnerable. Mom, she said quietly, thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on you, I looked at her, really looked, and saw not the woman who betrayed me, but the daughter who was learning how to begin again. You can rebuild almost anything, I said softly. Even love, it just takes time and truth. She nodded, and we walked together in silence. No speeches, no promises, no dramatic endings. Just quiet understanding. When I got home, I felt lighter. I poured tea, sat on the balcony, and watched the city breathe below. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and tulips, soft, alive, forgiving. Freedom, I realized. It wasn't about walking away forever. It was about walking back with boundaries intact and your heart still whole. And for the first time in years, I felt both. The house was quiet that morning in a way that felt deliberate, like a held breath before an important word. I had thought about this day for weeks. I had slept on it, walked around it, argued with it in my head. In the end, the decision was not born of anger. It was quiet. It was careful. It was necessary. All my life, I had made choices to protect people. Sometimes those choices were small. A warm meal, a loan, a phone call when hope ran thin. Sometimes they were big, signing papers, lending my name, standing in front of rooms, and asking people to care. This time, the choice was bigger still. It would shape what came after me long after my voice was gone. I set the kettle on and watched the steam rise. The simple rituals steadied me. Then I sat at my desk with a thick folder of legal documents and a hot cup of tea. The papers smelled faintly of ink and business and a life, lived with careful hands. I had spoken with our lawyer the week before. He had explained the options plainly and without flourish. We could restructure the foundation. We could put a trust in place. We could change beneficiaries, set new rules for access to funds. He had said one practical thing that stayed with me. You can protect the work you started by making it independent of any one name. That idea felt right. It felt true, so I decided to do it. Not to punish Maya, but to protect what the foundation meant. Names matter when they keep promises. When they do not, money can become a tool for erasure instead of a way to build. I would make it so the money could not be used as a prop for someone's vanity. I would bind it to purpose. Nora arrived early that day. She moved through the house with gentleness, knowing how my mind worked. Everything set, she asked, placing a slim envelope on the desk. Yes, I said. Let's make it clear. No more uncertainty. We spent the morning reviewing documents. The trust language was strong but simple. Funds designated for scholarships, microloans, training programs, and small community projects. A board of trustees would oversee disbursement, made up of people who had actually done the work, volunteers, longtime donors, and women who had risen through the programs. No single person would control the money. No single name would be able to claim ownership. It felt right to design protection that mirrored the foundation's original spirit. The heart promise would not belong to one face or one voice. It would belong to many hands. When the time came to sign, I sat with the pen poised. It felt like signing a covenant. There were papers to remove Maya from any direct control of funds tied to public events and naming rights. There were lines to add, safeguards to set. Each signature felt heavy and also freeing. With each stroke, the road ahead became clearer. After I signed, Nora hugged me. You did the right thing, she whispered. Her words warmed me like a blanket. She had been with me through years of laughter and small disasters. Her loyalty was a quiet, bright thing. I called the lawyer to confirm everything had been recorded properly. He was efficient and steady. The trust is in place, he said. Assets transferred. The board will convene next week. You've done this cleanly. His voice left no room for doubt. I felt relief like a breath finally allowed out. That afternoon, I went to the foundation office. The staff had been informed in a gentle way. There was no drama, no press release, simply the fact of change and the work that would continue. Volunteers arrived with boxers and lists. The smell of paper and coffee and active hands filled the room. The old community hall felt comfortable in its modesty. Margaret was there, leaning against the counter with that same warm smile that had steadied me in earlier years. She reached for my hand and squeezed. You've given them a future, she said, a real one. Her praise was not for me alone. It was for the truth of what we had built together. We talked quietly about scholarships, about the small loans that could change a woman's life, about training programs that taught bookkeeping and confidence. We mapped out steps. We wrote lists. We decided that when the board met, priority would go to women who had been overlooked by flashy donors and to projects with clear community benefit. Evening came with a gentle rain. I walked to the cemetery with an umbrella and a small bouquet of red tulips, Richard's favorite. The path was soft under my shoes, the world muffled in that wet silence. I placed the flowers carefully on his grave, fingers brushing his name carved deep into stone. Thank you, I whispered. We did what you would have wanted. It felt strange to speak into the quiet, but it felt necessary. His memory had been part of every choice I had made. He had taught me to value work over image, people over posture. I felt him there like a compass, and it kept me steady. That night, Maya called. Her voice was smaller than before, not entirely broken, but shifted. She asked questions about the changes, about the scholarship criteria, about the sort of women the foundation would support. There was a tone of curiosity that felt like the first step toward care. I answered calmly and plainly. I told her the truth. The foundation's mission would not change, but the names on banners would not do the work for us. If she wanted a role again, she would need to show through action that she understood what our work truly meant. She paused on the line. Will there be a way back? She asked quietly. There is always a way back, I said, but it is a path that needs to be built with small steps. Honest words, real deeds, humility. It is not won by a speech or a party. I made no promises. I offered only a possibility. People started to notice the shift. Small donors wrote messages of thanks. Women we supported sent notes about their businesses and how a small loan had kept their lights on. These were the things that mattered. Not coverage, not applause, but lives quietly altered. The foundation's inbox filled with stories. A bakery that could buy a second oven. A seamstress who trained others. A small clinic that could open for extra hours. Those letters were the pulse of the work. I read them all and felt my heart grow full in a way that is impossible to fake. Giving, after all, is not always about sacrifice. Sometimes it restores the giver to. Over the next weeks. As the new board took shape, Maya attended some meetings. She came not as the host of a gala, but as a volunteer willing to learn. She listened. She asked questions. She sat quietly when others spoke and took notes as if she had discovered a new language. There were awkward moments. Old wounds do not heal in a single evening. Trust is built in invisible acts. A phone call returned, a pasta delivered at midnight, a loan repaid on time. Each small step matters more than any grand event. One afternoon, after a meeting about microloans, Maya stayed behind. Mom, she said without ceremony, I want to apologize again. Not for the headlines, but for losing sight of what truly matters. She looked at me with an openness that felt fragile and true. I don't want your name as a prop. I want to earn the right to work beside you. I looked at her, seeing the mixture of shame and resolve. The choice to accept can sometimes be as important as the choice to forgive. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means giving the chance to rebuild under new rules. If you stay, I said gently, you do it by the work, not by speeches, not by brands. We will judge by action. We will measure by the lives changed. She nodded solemnly. It was not a reconciliation made in the heat of emotion, but a careful one. Built on promise and proof. Autumn settled into the city with golden leaves and a crisp hush. The first Heart Promise scholarships were awarded in a small ceremony at the community hall. No flashbulbs, no influential hosts, just the recipients, their families, and the volunteers who had guided them. One by one, women stood to tell their stories. How a small loan helped a child stay in school. How training taught them to balance books. How a tiny grant meant the difference between closing and opening a door. I sat in the back, hands folded, tears at the edge of my eyes. The power of the moment was quiet and real. I felt pride that did not need to be loud. Pride sits differently in your chest when it is earned by others, not manufactured by headlines. That night, as I walked home under the street, I felt a soft contentment like the warmth of a wool scarf around the throat. The decisions I had made had cost money and strained relationships, but they had protected a promise. I had chosen to secure a future where the work mattered more than a name on a banner. Maya walked beside me for a while, not holding my hand, but close enough that we shared the path. We did not speak much. Words would come later, as would steady deeds. For now, the silence was not empty. It was a room being rebuilt with careful hands. I thought about how vanishing had never meant erasing. It had meant the courage to create boundaries, to protect truth, to insist that legacy be more than mere letters on a poster. I had stepped back from the stage, not to disappear, but to clear space for things that endured. At home that night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and watched the city breathe. Somewhere below, a bakery closed for the night. A mother tucked her child into bed. A volunteer finalized a lesson plan. Small acts of ordinary grace went on and on. I picked up a small card Maya had once made for me as a child, the one that said, "To Mom, the woman who helps everyone and never asks for anything." I pressed it to my chest. I had asked for something now: respect, truth, and a future tied to the people we served, not to fame. Outside, the wind moved the leaves in gentle applause. Inside, my home smelled of tea and old books and the quiet satisfaction of work done for the right reasons. I laid the card down, turned off the light, and went to bed. The last act was complete. Not a dramatic finish, but a steady closure that would protect what mattered most. It was winter when I finally understood what peace really meant. Not the peace of stillness or silence, but the peace of having done everything you could, of knowing you no longer owed the past anything except remembrance. The air outside had turned sharp. Frost painted the edges of the windows like lace. Inside, the house glowed with the warmth of the fireplace. I sat wrapped in my old wool shawl, Richard's favorite record, spinning softly on the player. It had been months since the gala that never was. The noise of it, the rumors, the gossip, all faded now like smoke after a fire. People had moved on, as they always do. But for me, life had become quieter, deeper, and far more meaningful. The Heart Promise Foundation had grown, not in size, but in soul. Every week, women came through our doors, some carrying broken dreams, others carrying nothing but courage. They sat in small rooms and told their stories. We listened, we helped, we built, brick by brick, plan by plan. There were no red carpets now, no champagne towers, no journalists, but there was laughter. There were tears of gratitude. There were beginnings. And to me, that was worth everything I had lost. One evening, Maya joined me at the center. It had been her idea. She came every Friday now, quietly, without cameras, without entourage. She helped stack boxes, organize grant files, and serve tea to the women who came for workshops. That night, as we packed the last of the supply boxes, she turned to me with a smile that was soft and unguarded. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" I replied, not looking up from the papers. "The attention," she said. "The headlines, the parties." I chuckled quietly. "No, I miss truth more than I ever miss noise." She nodded slowly, as if turning the thought over in her mind. "It's strange," she said after a moment. "All my life I thought power meant being seen. But now I think it's the opposite." I looked at her then. Her face had changed in small ways. Gentler lines, less makeup, eyes clearer. "That's because real power," I said, "isn't about who sees you. It's about what you leave behind when you're gone." We locked up the hall and stepped into the cold. Snowflakes drifted from the sky like feathers. The streets were quiet except for the crunch of our boots on the frozen ground. "Mom," she said softly, "I've been thinking. I want to start a small project, a mentorship program for young women who want to learn finance. Maybe call it the Evelyn Project. Only if you'll let me." Her tone wasn't proud or persuasive. It was humble, careful. She was no longer asking for ownership. She was asking for guidance. I smiled and linked my arm through hers. "Only if you promise to make it about them, not about you." She laughed quietly, breath fogging in the air. "Deal." When we got home, we had tea together for the first time in months. The fireplace crackled and the warmth between us was real. Not the kind you fake for guests, but the kind that comes when forgiveness has been tested and proven. She told me about her new job. Smaller now, but honest. She told me about how she'd reached out to the women she had excluded from the guest list and invited them back to collaborate on new projects. "They forgave me," she said quietly. "Not all at once, but they did. I think they just needed to see that I meant it." "That's how forgiveness works," I said. "It arrives slowly, like spring after winter. But once it comes, things grow again." We sat there in silence for a while, sipping tea, letting the fire fill the spaces between words. Later that week, we held the first annual Heart Promise Summit, a small gathering of scholarship recipients, volunteers, and partners. No press, no grand speeches, just stories. Women stood up one by one and shared how a small grant had changed their lives. One spoke of a bakery she opened. Another spoke of putting her daughter through college. One woman said she'd used the money to help her mother escape an abusive marriage. Each story landed like a heartbeat in the room. When they finished, I stood quietly, letting the applause fade. Then I said something I had been waiting to say for a long time. "People often think giving is about charity." I told them, "But real giving is about respect. It's about believing someone can rise if given a chance." My husband believed that, I believed that, and now, so do all of you. So remember, when someone gives you a hand, take it not as a favor, but as a promise. A promise to lift the next person to. The room was silent for a moment, then filled with the sound of gentle clapping, not wild, but sincere. Maya stood near the back, her eyes glistening. And in that moment, I saw her as she had been once. The little girl who believed in good things. After the event, she came to me. "You were incredible," she said softly. I smiled. "I wasn't incredible. I was honest." She nodded. "That's what makes it incredible." We laughed and it felt easy again. Weeks turned into months. The foundation continued its quiet work. Maya took charge of the mentorship program, and true to her word, she made it about the women. No luxury venues, no photographers, just classrooms, lessons, and real mentorship. Sometimes I'd visit and watch her from the doorway as she taught. The way she spoke, the way she listened, it reminded me of the version of her that I had loved before the noise took her. And I realized then she hadn't become someone new. She had simply found her way back home. One night, near spring, she came by for dinner. After the dishes were cleared, she pulled out a folder. Inside were blueprints, plans for a new community center. I want to build it in Dad's name. She said, a place for women to learn trades, manage finances, get legal advice. We'll call it the Richard Hart Learning Center. The foundation will fund it through the new trust. I stared at the drawings, at the care she had put into every detail. For the first time, she was building something that would outlive both of us. Richard would have smiled. I could almost hear his voice saying, she's found her footing, Evelyn. When spring came, the first bricks were laid for the center. It wasn't grand. There was no ribbon cutting, no celebrity guest, just us, Maya, the board, and a group of women in bright scarves and work gloves. Maya placed the first brick herself, then turned to me. This is for him, she said. And for you, and for everyone who thought they were invisible. I nodded, unable to speak. My heart was too full. As we stood there watching the walls begin to rise, I realized something profound. It wasn't just a building we were creating. It was closure. It was rebirth. It was the physical proof that love, when rebuilt honestly, can endure anything. That evening, I went home and sat by my window. The air filled with the smell of spring. I looked at the city, alive, messy, beautiful, and I smiled. Because I knew now that even the deepest wounds could turn into gardens if you tended them with patience. Maya had once wished I'd vanish. And in a way, I had the old version of me, the one who tolerated disrespect and mistook silence for peace. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned that love is not submission, but strength. A mother who finally understood that teaching a child doesn't end when they grow up. Sometimes it begins all over again. That night, before bed, I opened my diary and wrote one last entry. I have seen what pride can destroy. I have seen what humility can rebuild. And I have learned that sometimes you must disappear, not to be forgotten, but to be remembered rightly. I closed the book, placed it on the shelf beside Richard's photo, and turned off the light. The room glowed faintly in the moonlight. Outside, somewhere, a tulip had begun to bloom. And for the first time in a very long time, I whispered, not with bitterness, but with grace. I am free. She wished I'd vanish, but instead, I became everything she had forgotten to see.